Sandra saying hi. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to our Ontario NEIHR monthly webinar. This month is, we welcome Dr. Rod McCormick, who is here to talk about using metaphors to guide our research and practice. Dr. Rod McCormick, Kanienkehaka-Mohawk, is a senior professor and BC government endowed research chair in Indigenous Health at Thompson Rivers University. Before moving back to his partner's home and community of T'Kemlupste Secwepemc, Rod was a psychologist and counseling psychology professor at the University of British Columbia for 18 years. Dr. McCormick's research focuses on community capacity building in mental health and research, as well as reclamation of traditional forms of healing. Dr. McCormick has been a clinician and consultant in Indigenous mental health for approximately 35 years. Dr. McCormick was the lead for the BC Aboriginal Capacity and Developmental Research Environments, the BC Network Environments for Aboriginal Health Research, and is currently the lead on the National International Indigenous Mentorship Network, Ombaashi, as well as the All My Relations Center at TRU. We'd like to welcome Dr. Rod McCormick, and I'd like to also welcome Clay Shirt, who will be doing our spiritual opening, and then we'll begin with Dr. McCormick. So, Clay?
Oh, miigwech, Roy.
Yes.
I just want to thank everyone for being here. I'm happy to see, and I'm happy to see your names, everything, miigwech. And I just do this traditional open out, just point in a very kind way. I mean, it's just, again, we come together as the people in this virtual reality, and we're just sort of painting a picture here of a virtual circle. We're all in just sort of a picture in our minds and our hearts that we're all in this sacred circle, in this hoop, the medicine wheel, that hoop, and we come together as the people, and we just invite spirit in there. With spirit, we are spirit experiencing something. We are the people, the human beings, and so they usually ask a traditional person, an elder, a knowledge holder, to come and invite spirit. And that's all I'm going to try to do, in a good way, in a kind way, in this language. Many nations. And so with that, I want to say miigwech. I say thank you and for attending. And it's my great pleasure to hear and Dr. Rod's speak. I haven't met him personally, but over the time we've had many conversations over the in cyberspace here, and I've always enjoyed his talks and listening to him and what he's doing and helping the people and serving the people in his way. And I just say miigwech to him for allowing me to do this. So with that, I just want to say miigwech to you all, and take a moment or two and just have a breath, just breathe. And I'll just join me in a prayer if you would like. I say miigwech again. I say thank you to our first mother of all mothers again. I send my thoughts to her. I pray to her. I pray for her. I give thanks to our first mother of all mothers. I say miigwech to her for everything she provides for us. The medicine to nurture, to help us in a good way, in a kind way, for everything she does for us. Our first mother of all mothers. I love you, we love you, we say miigwech to you for everything you do for us. With one mind, one heart, we say miigwech, we say thank you. I send my thoughts to Father Sky, that spirit world. I ask the spirits of my ancestors, those good ones, your ancestors, wherever you may be, to find you, to wherever you are, in a good way, in a kind way, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, to be with you and to help us in these very difficult, challenging times. We ask for your strength, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, grandfathers and grandmothers, to guide us in a good way, in a kind way, to protect our children, to protect us, our loved ones, in these difficult, challenging times. I say miigwech to you. I love you. grandmas. I love you, grandfathers. I love you. I say miigwech to you for always being with us. So with one mind, one heart, I say thank you. I send my thoughts to grandfather, son, for this new day, this new beginning, for bringing the warmth. You are so beautiful, and I'm so grateful for this day. And I'm so grateful for making the medicine grow in a good way, in a kind way, so it may always nurture us and else help us sustain our lives. And I thank you, grandfather, son, for this new day, this new beginning. And if I have done anything in the past, if I've done any wrong, I have this moment to make it right. And I thank you for this moment, for this day. I say miigwech to you, grandfather, son, for shining so brightly today where I am. I say thank you. With one mind, one heart, I say thank you. I send my prayers to Nukamis, grandmother of all grandmothers. Again, I love you, grandma. I say, from my heart, I say miigwech to you for everything you do for us. You are so beautiful in the night. I love you. We love you. Again, I pray to you. I pray for you in gratitude for everything you do for us, the people. As we sleep, as our children sleep, you do this for us. We acknowledge this. At this moment, I acknowledge this. Put the waters, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans into order for us, and many other things you do for us, Nukumis. But I acknowledge this, for water is life. As my children sleep, as my granddaughter sleeps, as our children sleep, you do this for us. You put the waters into order for us. And I acknowledge this. We acknowledge this. And we say thank you from our hearts. With one mind, one heart, we say miigwech to you, Nukumis. I send my prayers to you, to our Creator, the great mystery. Again, Creator, I stand here as just a man, and I say miigwech to you for this beautiful gift you have given us, called our lives, and the sacredness of life. I say thank you for this. I ask for the blessings for everyone who is in this circle today, to protect them, watch over them from this virus called COVID. May it never enter their homes. May it go around their homes. May it never enter their homes. May it never touch their hands. I say miigwech to you, Creator. I ask as just a man for the blessings for all of us, to protect us, to keep us, to give us strength, to keep us well. I say miigwech to you, Creator, for this beautiful gift again called life. I thank you, Creator, for my heart. Again, Creator, for there is nothing beyond you, Creator. I say miigwech to you for this beautiful gift called our lives, for my life, all my relations. Miigwech, miigwech, miigwech. Thank you guys for allowing me to say that. It's just a traditional opening prayer in this very, very sloppy language called English. I don't really speak my language that well. I struggle with it, but again, with all humility, thank you for allowing me to do this simple prayer that I try to live by every day of my life. So with that, I say miigwech, and miigwech. It's all you there, Rod. Miigwech.
All right. Well, Niawa Clay for that beautiful prayer, and Roy for that intro. And yeah, I thought I'd share with you guys today some aspect of my work. I didn't really feel like presenting on a research project nor clinical practice. I thought to use a metaphor, use something with a bigger picture. So hopefully you find this interesting, if not useful. And yeah, and thanks, Roy, if you can share my screen. I've got about 30 slides, but I'll probably spend less than a minute on each one because I'm, where are we? Yeah, so it's metaphors to guide our research and practice. And it's just something that I found. I mean, we all use metaphors in our speech, probably without knowing it, but these are ones that I use quite purposefully in my work, and maybe it'll inspire you guys to use metaphors as well. Yeah, next slide. So this is just the abstract of what was sent out. And I like them because it gets us to think differently. I'll present on a few of them that I use: backswing, ripple effect, circle, square. Oh, miracle walk is another one that I'll present on. And just examples, because we all know of many metaphors in ceremony and in nature. And then hopefully you guys can share some of the metaphors you use in your own work. Next slide. The backswing. Some of you may have heard me use this one before. And I actually got it from a colleague who wrote a book called The Physics of Living. He was another counseling psych prof, Norm Amundsen, and his undergrad was in physics. So he applied physics as a metaphor for life and wrote a book about it. And I told him the real metaphors come from nature, not from math. But Sandra's on the line, my associate director who teaches calculus at the university, so she'd probably argue with me about that one. So the backswing, and we've all used the backswing, whether it's with a hammer or a broom, a golf club, baseball bat. In order to go forward with power, we need to have that backswing. And it helps us to generate power by reviewing our past accomplishments as well in our life, identifying skills, knowledge, and resources to move forward. Next slide. I'm not going to read them all. I'll just kind of highlight them. So I use the golf metaphor here, even though I live in the golf course part of the reserve here at T'Kemlupste. I still have never golfed on it, mainly because I haven't really learned how to play golf yet. And I go and wreck my back as soon as I move here. So I don't know if I'll ever learn, but I have definitely used backswing in various sports. And so next slide, I think. Yeah, so if you didn't have the backswing and you were just using a putter, it would take you a long time to play 18 holes. And or if you were just bunting, playing baseball, without that backswing, you're not going to get very far. So I would argue that when our families, communities, and organizations are facing crises, then we too need to take that step backward to gather medicine or strength. We look at what's worked for us in the past and what skills we have, what resources and relationships to move forward. So we gather the medicines before we go on the healing journey. Next slide. I think it's a good metaphor for research as well. I mean, if you look at the word research, I think before we can address a problem, we must research what we know, what we need to know, what resources are available, and to gather that strength and resources to move forward. Traditional creation stories often tell us what we need to know how to lead a good life. So research might mean that we need to search again for what we once knew. Next slide. I'm going through these quickly. So yeah, that was the cover I used. Next slide. So the Inuit have teachings called Inuit Kauyimayatukanit. I wrote that out phonetically because it's a really hard word to say. I memorized it the last time I was presenting up in Iqaluit. Everyone was quite impressed, but I can't remember how to say it without a lot of practice. So these teachings, or this collective body of knowledge, prepares Inuit for success in the future. They've used the bow and arrow analogy to explain the relevance those teachings have for the future. If you do not draw back the arrow in the bow, it will drop a short distance in front of you. And non-Indigenous people probably like the backswing as in golf or in tennis. It's a better metaphor, but next slide. So yeah, funding agencies often forget about the need for the backswing. Government funding initiatives provide little or no time for consultation, planning, and backswing. They expect you to move forward from the day you receive the dollars. And then you've got to verify that forward movement with each and every progress report. So it's kind of setting us up in many ways for failure by not allowing that backswing. And I mean, that has to do with research and all government funding, really. It's interesting, just a quick anecdote. We were presenting at the Wabano Center in Ottawa with the heads of the NIOs and a whole bunch of agencies and the president of CIHR. And he was going on about the future and all the marvelous things technology are going to do. And we had this meeting because he had made some really harmful changes to Indigenous funding for health research. And when he was done talking, I put my hand up and I said, "Your whole presentation was future oriented." He said, "Exactly." And he said, "You're asking us to trust you and to wait, and it's going to work out for us better in the long run." And we just don't like that way of thinking. And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, so I asked him if he played golf, and I used the backswing metaphor. And I said, you know, without that backswing, you can't move forward. And just to show the culturally biased way in which he was looking at it, I think he responded with, "Je me souviens," we remember. I said, that's not the same thing as what I'm talking about. But anyway, often they get the golf metaphor. So I'll move on to another metaphor, I think. Next one. Oh, the ripple metaphor. This one is one that I've been using more of. I guess I've been using it for years in some ways. Next slide. Yeah, so we've all probably dropped a stone in the water and you see those ripples moving outwards and those concentric circles. They remind me of circles that make up our lives and realities as Indigenous people. So if I'm the stone or the center, the first circle might represent friends and peers, moving outwards, family, extended family, community, nation, culture, natural world, spiritual world, and so on. So they're all interconnected. And you've probably all seen that image before. I know I was using a version of it, which I'll show you, about 30 years ago, because I looked at all my original circle triangle drawings, and they're all on overhead projector transparencies. Some of you might not even know what that is, but that's how we used to present at conferences. Yeah, next slide. So to make it even more abstract, I guess if you toss a bunch of stones in, you see all the concentric circles, but then they all join together to create one large circle with ripples. And I'd say that for about 150 years, we've experienced those ripples in a negative way. Next slide. So you see I'm whizzing through these. So yeah, I mean, those look more like raindrops hitting, but if you threw a bunch of stones in, you'd see this at first and how those intersect. It becomes quite an interesting metaphor if you play with it for a while. And I'm just going to leave it to your imaginations. Next slide. Yeah, so the colonization disrupted those circles and created its own negative ripple effect. Irvin Yalom refers to the fact that each of us creates, often without our conscious intent or knowledge, concentric circles of influence that may affect others for years or even generations. Next slide. So this is the drawing, one of the drawings that I used many years ago, and I guess it represents those circles, but it also represents self-transcendence, which I think it may have been Teresa Laframboise from Stanford talked about Western culture focusing on self-actualization, which is more individual focus, with Indigenous cultures focusing more on self-transcendence, because it's when you get beyond yourself that you get connected to source of meaning and source of strength. Next slide. So yeah, just those disconnections. So if you think back to those circles again, families were disconnected through the residential schools, communities disconnected through being relocated to reserves, then often relocated again. Cultural practices being banned or prohibited. Nature, relocating people to urban settings to speed up assimilation. Spirituality replaced with Christianity. So it just shows those disconnections and how those circles were broken. Next slide. Where are we here? Oh yeah, okay. I was on to my next metaphor. So yeah, I wrote a paper for our Knowledge Makers journal talking about particle theory versus wave theory, even though I think I barely passed grade 11 physics, but the physicists have sort of switched over now to more indigenous thinking, which is interesting. So it's my hope that we come to understand our research can create ripples of positive energy, and that many stones can create a large ripple effect that will send this positive flow of energy to our friends, families, communities, nations, and all of creation. Next slide. Yeah, so in the middle there of this circle, you can see all the little tiny circles. That's from a handful of rocks being thrown in. And the ripples go quite a ways. Next slide. So keeping sort of on that water theme, cleansing is a metaphor that we use a lot in ceremony and in other ways. Next slide. So this is just a quote from one of the studies I did. This person talked about bathing. Whatever it was I wanted removed, I could cover my body with mud or sand and then go into the river and wash it away. And I did this for a month, and it helped because we had to put a name to what it was I wanted to get rid of and then wash it away. The physical washing affected the emotional and spiritual by washing and cleansing them as well. I would do this bathing the first thing before the sun was up, and last thing before the sun was down. In the city, I can do this by washing with just water from the tap. Next slide. So yeah, I got to work with the late elder Ellen White from Vancouver Island. I believe she was Nanaimo, and it was a men's healing conference, and she was the only, I had organized it, and she was the only female that was invited because she was an elder there, and the men wanted to hear from her. And she was listening to their sad stories and got up and said, "You all have to take showers." And everyone laughed. And she said, "No, you've got to cleanse yourself. So right after this, I want you all to go take showers." And the thing is, you got to ask the water with humility to cleanse you. You can't just say, "Hey, wash this away." You've got to really focus on being humble. And the water will work for you. You don't have to go up the mountain in those glacier fjords and ponds and bathe in that cold water. You can use it from the tap, and you can use hot water. So I thought that was interesting. And then she actually was in that same conference. She told them they had their valves in backwards. She said, "You got your valves in wrong. You're letting in the good, all the bad stuff, and you're keeping out the good stuff. Flip those valves around. They're supposed to keep the bad stuff out and let the good stuff in." So that was interesting. A lot of these metaphors I get from elders. And there was another one. She was on life support, had a close call, and then when she got out, she's telling me that that monitor she stared at every day had lines going up and down. I guess it was her heart monitor. And the nurses told her that that's good, because if it goes flat, that's really bad. So she said, I figured life's like that. It's got its ups and downs, and you want that. You don't want the flat. You want the ups and downs. So lots of wonderful metaphors out there. Next slide. So ceremony is filled with them, of course. One that I used actually back in first year of my doctoral program, 91, the PhD cohort I was with, we had to write a paper on attachment theory, which I found kind of very Western. The idea is if you don't have a secure attachment to mother or father, then you are insecure in your life going forward. And I argued that traditional Indigenous child rearing wasn't the biological mother or father that necessarily raised you, and that the secure base or those positive attachments were through symbolic or metaphorical mothers and fathers, through ceremony, that attachment with the natural world, Mother Earth, and the spiritual world, Father Sky, provided us with that secure base. And it was just through colonization that was disrupted. Anyway, I think he gave me a B for the paper. So didn't really like it, I guess. But I published the same paper a couple years later when I graduated, and didn't change anything. So anyway, that's another example, that ceremony. So that's the Vision Quest ceremony is one of those ways in which people made that attachment, but there were many ceremonies across Turtle Island. Next slide. So this is one I really like because it's experiential, which you guys can't experience on the Zoom call, but Jan Derrick, Dr. Jan Derrick, who's a Mohawk who lives here in Kamloops, she's does family therapy, and she developed this to show the disruption to traditional families, Indigenous families, and how this Western box model took over, and the disruption it caused. She does 1- and 2-day workshops on this for facilitators. And I've used it. She taught me years ago, and I've used it in some really weird situations, but I'll just explain it. So next slide. So here she is constructing it. She's the microphone on the left. And if you look at this picture on the bottom, you can't really see it, but there should be 3 or 4 kids. And they usually sit with their backs touching each other, looking out. And then the first circle around them are the mothers. They all put one hand on the shoulder or head of each kid. And then behind them are the fathers, which you can see here. They're supporting the mothers. And then behind the next circle out are the grandparents, the grandmothers and fathers, and they are supporting everything. And then I sometimes add ancestors to yet another circle, but it's quite interesting because once it's created, you can ask each group how this feels, and the children always say, oh, wow, never felt so supported and safe. And the mothers, this feels good. You know, my kids right here, I can see them. My husband's supporting me, the husbands feel useful, and the elders feel like they're holding it all together, which they are. Next slide. So this is the square model. Jan, when she does the circle, sometimes she'll have the Indian agent take the kids out of the middle of the circle. You can't do that unless it's safe and you've got time to do it properly, but it really is a visceral feeling for everyone when that happens, and the circle kind of implodes upon itself once those children are removed. In this model, I couldn't find a picture to represent it, but you've got people standing in rows. At the front are the fathers, because it's to represent the Western male dominance. Behind them are the mothers. Behind them are the elders. And at the very back are the children. And then if you ask them, in this sort of sculpture, the square, the fathers don't feel comfortable. They don't know where they're going. If they're driving the bus, they don't like being out there and they just want to leave. The mothers feel they can't see their kids. They don't trust their husbands, whether they're going to stick around. The elders feel like they're useless. They're not doing anything. And the kids kind of feel abandoned. I often encourage them to run around, go crazy, because the grandparents can't see what they're doing. So anyway, it really shows in an experiential way what it's like to have the child-centered focus disrupted. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just Jan's statement. If you go to her website, I think it's Four Winds Wellness. In the history of North America, the non-natives in the box system imposed oppression and control upon the circle system. Members of the circle system show signs of stress under this oppression. similar to those of war veterans, including high levels of anxiety, dysfunction, hopeless approach to life, etc. Healing can take place by switching from the box to the circle. Yeah, next slide. Just share a couple more metaphors. I could do a whole presentation on this one, and in fact have, but I just picked one of the biggest metaphors in nature, and that's the mountain. So next slide. Normally I get people to read these. I think for the sake of time, I'm not going to read this, but this person was inspired by that mountain and decided they were going to live like that mountain, or to be more like that mountain. Anyway, I'm not, for the sake of time, I won't read it. Next slide. So Miracle Walk is another one from Norm Amundsen. It's really simple to use. You can use it with a whole group. I've used it with as many as 150 people, or probably 200 because it was a big meeting room, and as little as one person. With clients, you can use stairwells, flat, go outside. But the picture on the left shows people. So you line people up and you have them look at the far wall or some distance if you're outside. And you have them imagine, okay, this is, if you think of a goal where you want to be in 1 year, 10 years or whatever, try to picture that goal. Now, in between the goal and where they're standing are a whole bunch of obstacles. So I get them to think of 3 or 4 big obstacles. So if it was, I don't know, I want to get my degree, but one obstacle might be, I don't have the money, I don't have a car, I don't have this, that. So they picture those obstacles. And then the miracle walk is, I walk with them and I say, miraculously, we're going to get to your goal without, by avoiding all the obstacles. So we walk there. Then I have them turn around and look back. I say, now feel what it is to feel you've achieved this goal, whatever it happened to be. Now look back at those obstacles. Do they look any different? And almost always people say, yeah, they do look different. They look smaller, or they don't look as scary as when I was facing them. So it's a metaphor to help people understand that they actually have overcome lots of obstacles in their life. And when they look back at them in retrospect, they realize they do have a lot of the strengths and resources they need to get around or overcome those obstacles. It's a really simple exercise, but it changes people's perspective and helps to empower them. Next slide. I think I'm almost done with my examples. Yeah, I was just looking for pictures of obstacle courses. It's a thing, apparently. In reality shows, people pay money to do these extreme obstacle courses, like the one on the left. The one on the right looks like it's a military training thing. Not pleasant. I've done that obstacle course, but I wouldn't voluntarily want to do one again. Next slide. So this one's a little more abstract push-pull metaphor. I actually used it in a meeting with the feds. It was one of these talking head things, best of brains. So we had 5 Indigenous researchers, then the Deputy Minister of Health and all his assistant deputy ministers and associates and director generals. And they were using very mechanistic language. It was about determinants of health. So they were talking about levers and drivers and determinants. And I said, this is so mechanistic. And I said, it's like this Western worldview, like you can force change, you can push things. I said, you can't. And so I said, causes push, reasons pull, and reasons for getting better, for living are instinctive, to find that meaning in those circles. We talked about those circles. Anyway, it's a very existential explanation, and they all wrote it down and thought it was interesting, and then I'm sure they forgot about it. But next slide. By the way, if you've ever been around horses, never push them from behind. Okay, this was, yeah, I was criticizing Health Canada, and some presentation, I didn't realize that wind speaker was in the audience. So I ended up with two headlines that didn't make me very popular with Health Canada. Next slide. McCormick, highly critical of Health Canada's approach for long-term health planning and mechanistic language. Health Canada has been in the business of pushing, and we're instinctively pulled towards reasons for living. It's not instinctive to be pushed. And sometimes when we're pushed, we tend to be resistant, which can lead in self-destructive behavior. Next slide. So yeah, what was needed is to remove the barriers. And you know, we all know them: lack of access, lack of cultural appropriate programming, short-term funding. Anyway, then we'll get to our healing ourselves. Next slide. Last one, metaphors and pandemics. So I looked this up, and it's interesting, the metaphors are out there. The big one is war. It's a very Western or American way of looking at it, I think, or maybe British or Canadian too. War on drugs, trade wars, war on cancer, war on terrorism, war on illegal immigration. And you can see that sort of war poster. Next slide. And last slide, I think. Yeah, so it's just some of the ones that are up there, very World War II looking. And last slide. So a better metaphor to promote civil responsibility and solidarity instead of warfare. And I'll let you just read that. And so I think that's a better poster, the one on the right. I just got to run to the door for a second. So that's the end of the presentation. I'll be right back. You guys think of your metaphors. Still there? You guys? Okay, you could end it, Roy. Thanks. Sorry, I thought I had kids down here, front door. They've all gone upstairs to keep quiet, probably. So hopefully you guys can share either some questions or you have some metaphors that you'd like to share with the group. Where are you going to field the questions, or?
I don't have any questions at the moment, but I do. Somebody is asking, could I please have the source of the quotes on the last slide?
Sure. Elizabeth, could you just email me? I probably have it in my notes. I just didn't put it on the slide. I should have.
Rod,
Yeah,
sorry, who was that person you quoted the website? I missed that. You could go to her website. One of the people you were researching. She was, I think it was an elder, or was it?
Ellen. Oh, right, Jan Derrick.
Jan Derrick. Okay.
Derrick.
Okay.
And it's Four Winds Wellness, I think.
Four Winds Wellness. Okay. All right. Yeah. I was trying to remember that.
No, it's Four Winds. No, Four Directions. Yeah. She gives some great workshops for people if you're interested.
Cool. Great. Well, I thought of one I use a lot, a metaphor recently. just keep chugging along. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a
It's just-
little
yeah,
train
yeah.
that good. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. I got it from another psychologist, but he's an old Irishman. He kept telling me this: keep chugging along, Clay. Keep doing what you're doing. All right, and it's just so. And I was like, yeah. I find myself using that a lot because of, we're home a lot, right? Where our energy gets low. I know mine does, and in dealing with what we're dealing with today and all of this. And I have to get up, and the kids are home, everybody's home, and I just keep saying to myself, get out of bed, all right, give thanks, and keep chugging along. It just keeps popping in my head when I feel low.
Angela's got one there. Just keep swimming.
Yeah.
Dory, Finding Nemo. Luana, seeds as thoughts. Growing if it's being fed good food and water. Yeah. Braiding is one that a lot of people I've seen use. It's a really good one. So like yeah, this, Elizabeth, if you just send rmccormick@true.ca, my email's there. I'll send you those.
Rod, we do have a question from Angela. She's asking, what is your favorite metaphor?
I don't know. Good question. Never really thought of it. I guess I use the backswing and the circle one in my work. I'll have to think about that one. Wasn't expecting that question, Angela. Thanks. Well, I used to climb mountains before I messed up my back, and I liked, mind you, that was more of a philosophy. One of the first big mountains I ever climbed was Edmund Hillary's, one of the first ones he ever climbed, and he, of course, was the Everest person. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, which is more of a motto. That was the title of his book, I think. So I kind of like that. Like, you got to take risks in life, and I'm sure there's some really good metaphors about that. Just looking at other questions. Math, Sandra, did you want to? Are they allowed to talk, or they just put their comments in there? Okay. Sandra's probably got some math ones. Yeah, here we go. Modular arithmetic to demonstrate how people with different worldviews come to different conclusions about life and ethics. I'll have to get you to tell me about modular arithmetic, Sandra. I think she's going to help my daughter with pre-calc this afternoon. Other questions. One of the ways I got to use the circle square is we had our big showdown with CIHR at the Wendake Center in Quebec. And they had, this was with the Board of Governors of CIHR, and we had we had a number of deputy ministers, feds, and then Carolyn Bennett showed up late, but they were going to do, before dinner, a fireside chat, a Huron fireside chat. And I looked at it, and it looked like stuff they do for the tourists to stay at Wendake, which is a beautiful resort, by the way. And I thought, this is kind of hokey. So I said, I'm going to do something alternative. And they were really worried about what I was going to do, CIHR. I said, it'll be just a sculpture. And so I did the circle square. And we had to wait till Carolyn Bennett got there. She was late. And so we only had about 10 minutes to do it. But it was enough to give people the feeling what it would be like to have your children taken away from you, and what it's like to have your system, this rapid upheaval and replacement with the square system. So that people said that it kind of set the stage nicely for the conversation, and we got the 10 things we wanted from CIHR in the end. So I kind of had a dream about doing this with all the cabinet ministers and getting them to experience it, because truly you're never really going to get understanding if it's on a cognitive level. You've got to feel it at a different level. I'm surprised my dogs aren't bugging me. Just delivery people.
There's something else here in the chat from Sandra. She was just mentioning that some of the knowledge makers were building a teepee, reclaiming her culture, and another one used the salmon's journey to describe resilience.
Those are good ones. I proposed to the NAIDAP review committee I was on years ago, and that they use construction of a teepee as their metaphor for NAIDAP. Turns out they had no money to revise NAIDAP anyway, so I ended up quitting that committee. But the teepee was figured on the front cover of the report, construction of the teepee. So they liked that metaphor and used it. It's a lot of teaching that goes on in teepee construction.
Rod, I have one question. I don't know how this is related, but I know you've been doing this a very long time, and there's a lot of, in the beginning of your career as research and your practice, who did you go to? Where did you research? Like, who were your people you went to? Because, you know, who were your heroes? Who were the people that you looked at as the people you wanted to research and all that? How did you go about doing what you were doing? Because you've been doing this for such a long time.
Yeah, you were asking me. I've been out west now for 40 years. So I had a lot of mentors along the way. I mean, when I started at university, it was Verna Kirkness, who's a Cree woman who many people know from Aboriginal education. And she wanted me to work as a counselor at the new Longhouse. I was doing my PhD at the time, and which I did on the condition that I have a supervisor instead of some psychologist. I wanted traditional medicine man there, Vincent Stoken from Musqueam. And so that was all arranged. They were going to pay Vincent and everything. And then just as I started, he got quite sick. So that didn't happen. I was pretty upset and had to ask some psychologist to be my official supervisor so I could get my hours. But a lot of, you know, people like Joanne Archibald at UBC and that I learned a lot from. But just working, I guess I worked for 10 years. Well, before that, up in the Yukon with Indigenous communities. But I got to know a lot of the elders through those healing projects funded through Aboriginal Healing Foundation. One of the projects I worked with for 10 years, we had a lot of elders, but they were West Coast and a lot of them from the island. So much of what I learned was from the West Coast here. Yeah, I mean, I've got teachers all the time that pop up. Some of them are younger than me, but know a lot more.
Yeah. I imagine it must have been challenging, but you know, it's quite a while ago, and there wasn't that much out there as far as in the academic world to look at.
No, in fact, we had a meeting of everyone doing Indigenous research at UBC. This would have been around 92. And it was at the University Golf Club, and the place was packed. There's like 200 people in there, and they're all doing Indigenous research. None of them were Indigenous. So Verna brought me along because I was a doctoral student and Indigenous. So I talked a little bit about my research, but we were just amazed at how many people were studying us and writing about us. And so that was, I think I was the second Canadian to get a doctorate at UBC, Indigenous Canadian to get a doctorate at UBC. Atleo was before me, Richard. And there was a Alaskan American Indian, Oscar Quagley, that was the year before me. So to think that in 30 years or so, there's just been, yeah, I mean, we think there's been such little progress, but when you look back 30 years, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, because I was just wondering about that. Yeah. And it must have been challenging.
Yeah, and when I look at how little I knew, it's always embarrassing to look at your early papers. Wow. I want to take my name off. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny, as I get older, I realize I don't know anything. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's very humbling.
It is. Yeah.
All of that. Yeah.
Well, this has been kind of a fun presentation to do, and kind of weird not hearing from people, but I guess you kind of set it up that way for these things. And I want to thank people for listening in. It's we're all kind of zoomed to death, it seems. And so NGGS is coming up, the National Gathering of Graduate Students, and we've decided not to do any academic presentations at all. It's going to be self-care type of things, and healing, sharing our own healing knowledge. I said I'd do something on humor, and hopefully I can get Charlotte Lopi, or one of our natural stand-up comedians, to join me.
Well, I hope that she can help you. I hope you get her.
No other questions?
No, I don't see anything else here, Rob. Do you have anything anything that you want to say? We're nearing the end here. So if you have anything you want to close with, that would be great. I don't see anything in the Q&A or the chat. So if you have any final words.
Yeah, no great words of wisdom to leave you with, other than I think if we look around, learning to think in a linear, mechanistic way, I think is very limiting. You know, and most of us, our Western educations have been exactly that. And there've been a few creative people, like it was Edward de Bono with his lateral thinking that tried to force people out of the box, so to speak. And I always look for ways to creatively problem solve. So some things, I think I did this in Toronto once. It was a talk at one of Suzanne's conferences, and I had people think of a problem in the audience, then sent them out in the yard for 15 minutes and said, I want you to watch ants crawling on the trees, or pieces of grass or whatever blowing in the wind. And I want you to ask some element of nature to help you solve your problem, like to give you some guidance. And it's pretty cool, even though Toronto, very urban, and I think there was not a very big patch of grass. It was at, I forget where Suzanne used to have her meetings, but anyway, people came back with all kinds of marvelous insights that they thought that that was a pretty cool activity. So just encourage you guys to give it a try. And I know many of you probably already do.
Thank you, Rod, for that presentation. It was really great. And Clay, can you please close out in a good way? And
Yeah.
thank you everybody for showing up today.
So miigwech, Rod, for your presentation. Again, very, very, very informative, and gave me a lot to think about, and everything. And I know you've been doing this a very long time. So, and I was just in awe of that, and how you've been just, I use mine, chugging along, just going along, all of that. So I just, again, miigwech for that, and all the good work you're doing out there and helping the people. So with that, I want to say thank everyone for coming. And it is challenging. We're constantly plugged into this virtual world and everything. And I know everybody's tired these days. I know I am, and all of this. And so just take a moment or two and just take a breath, right? Just breathe, and just say miigwech. We give thanks to the earth, the sun, the sky, everything in between earth and sky, our four-legged friends, the crawlers, the swimmers, the flyers, for everything they provide for us, for all the teachings they provide us and our children. And they all is well for doing their work. And I say miigwech to our creator for this beautiful day. And I ask the creator for blessings of Rod and his family, right? And to keep him well and physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and all of us to come together as the people. And I say thank you, creator, for this day, all my relations. And thank you, Rod.
Yeah, well, quick sketching.
Miigwech, Rod.